July 14th, 1975, 9 a.m. Elvis Presley walks into the Madison Cadillac dealership in Memphis and says 5 words that make the salesman think he's joking. "I'll take 14 of these." Not one car. 14. Brand new Cadillacs. Total cost, $140,000, roughly $800,000 in today's money. And when the salesman asks who they're for, Elvis smiles and says, "I don't know yet, but somebody's going to be very happy today." What happened next became one of the most talked about stories in Memphis history. Elvis didn't buy those cars for friends or family. He bought them for strangers. A woman sitting in a park, a nurse walking to work, a gas station attendant. People he had never met in his life, people he would never see again. And when his accountant came running into the dealership screaming, "Elvis, you can't afford this," Elvis gave away one more car just to prove a point. Was this generosity? Or was it something darker? A manic episode, a cry for help, a man whose fortune had grown so vast he had lost all sense of reality. The people who witnessed it are still arguing 49 years later. July 14th, 1975 looked a lot like many of the days Elvis had been living through lately. He had been awake the entire night. He couldn't sleep. He had taken pills to try to sleep. It hadn't worked. By the time dawn broke, Elvis was full of energy, excited. He wanted to do something, anything. Around 8 a.m., Elvis told the Memphis Mafia, the group of friends and employees who surrounded him, that he wanted to go look at cars. That wasn't surprising. Elvis loved cars. He had dozens of them. Cadillacs, Lincolns, Rolls-Royces. Cars were one of the few things that still made him happy. But this time, it wasn't going to be an ordinary car shopping trip. Madison Cadillac was one of Memphis's premier dealerships. They were used to famous customers. Elvis had bought cars there before. But when Elvis walked in that Monday morning with a 5 or 6 person entourage, the sales staff sensed something was different. Elvis was in a strange mood, euphoric, almost manic. He wandered through the showroom looking at cars, silver Cadillacs, white ones, blue ones, and he kept repeating the same thing over and over. "I'll take this one, and this one, and this one." Salesman Howard Massey assumed at first that Elvis was joking. "Mr. Presley, would you like to take a test drive?" Elvis shook his head. "No need, I know Cadillacs. How many do you have on the lot?" "For immediate delivery, about 20. Elvis smiled. "I'll take 14. Howard Massey froze where he stood. 14 cars. That was $140,000. Even for Elvis Presley, this was absurd. "Mr. Presley, may I ask, are these gifts? For your group? For your family?" Elvis's answer stopped him cold. "I don't know yet, but I'll find people who need them, and I'm going to make their day." To understand what Elvis did that day, you have to understand his relationship with money. Elvis grew up in deep poverty in Tupelo, Mississippi. His family lived in a 2-room house. His father worked odd jobs. His mother took in laundry from other households. They moved to Memphis in 1948 and lived in public housing, Lauderdale Courts. When Elvis became famous in the mid-1950s and started making money, he never forgot what poverty felt like. And he developed a philosophy: if you have money and someone else needs it, you give it. That's all there is to it. Throughout his life, Elvis gave away cars, jewelry, and cash, often to people he didn't even know. When a stranger mentioned they were struggling, Elvis would write a check. When a fan said they needed help, Elvis would hand over money. It wasn't calculated. It was entirely instinctive. He never looked the other way. But by 1975, this generosity had taken on a different character. Elvis wasn't just giving away money anymore. He was giving it away in compulsive, erratic amounts that even his accountants couldn't keep track of. In 1975, something most people didn't know. Elvis wasn't as wealthy as everyone assumed. Yes, he was earning millions, but he was spending millions too. Colonel Tom Parker took 50% of everything Elvis made. Taxes took another large slice. Elvis was supporting his entire family, his father, his grandmother, aunts and uncles. He was paying salaries to the Memphis Mafia. He was maintaining Graceland, which consumed a small fortune on its own. Then there were the spending sprees: cars, jewelry, guns, horses. When Elvis saw something he liked, he bought multiples of it. He would walk into a store and buy everything in it. His accountant, Vernon Presley, Elvis's father, was constantly trying to rein in the spending, but Elvis wouldn't listen. Early in 1975, Vernon sat Elvis down and showed him the numbers. "Son, you're spending more than you're making. We need to slow down." Elvis's response: "Daddy, what's the point of having money if you can't spend it?" 4 months later, Elvis walked into a Cadillac dealership and bought 14 cars. Howard Massey called the dealership manager. "Elvis Presley wants to buy 14 Cadillacs. Right now, cash." The manager came out. "Mr. Presley, this is a very large purchase. Are you sure?" Elvis pulled out his checkbook. "I'm sure. Let's get the paperwork done." It took 2 hours to process everything: 14 bills of sale, titles, registration documents. Elvis sat in the manager's office, signed the papers, joked around with his entourage, as if he was thoroughly enjoying himself. When it was all done, Elvis owned 14 brand new Cadillacs, and he still had absolutely no idea who he was going to give them to. "All right," Elvis said, standing up and stretching. "Let's go find some people who need cars." And he walked out the door with his friends, leaving the dealership staff standing behind them in complete bewilderment. What was happening? Where was he going? And who were these cars for? Elvis had no plan. He simply started driving through the streets of Memphis in one of the new Cadillacs, his entourage following behind in the others. And when he came across someone who looked like they could use a hand, he stopped. The first recipient was a woman sitting on a bench in a park. She was perhaps in her 50s, wearing a worn dress, looking tired. Elvis got out of his car and walked over to her. "Ma'am, do you have a car?" The woman looked up, confused. "I beg your pardon? Do you have a car?" "No, I take the bus." Elvis smiled. "Not anymore." He pointed to the Cadillac he had just been driving. "That one's yours." The woman thought he was joking, or that he was crazy. "I don't understand." Elvis pulled out the title document and a pen. "What's your name?" She told him. Elvis transferred the title to her right there on the spot. "It's yours, paid in full. Just go to the DMV and register it." The woman started crying. I can't afford the insurance, the gas." Elvis reached into his wallet and handed her $500 in cash. "That'll keep you going for a while." Then he got into another Cadillac and drove away, leaving the woman standing there with a car title in her hands, sobbing. The second car went to a nurse walking down the street in her scrubs. Elvis pulled up beside her. "Do you work at a hospital?" The woman startled, then nodded. "Baptiste Memorial." "Do you walk to work?" "My car broke down last week. I don't have the money to fix it." Elvis got out of his car. "Would you like a new one?" 5 minutes later, the woman owned a Cadillac. Elvis had even forgotten to ask her name while filling out the paperwork. Elvis pulled one of the Cadillacs into a gas station to fill up. The attendant, young, maybe 20, a black kid, came over to pump the gas. Elvis watched him. "You like cars?" The attendant smiled. "Love them. I'm going to own a Cadillac someday." Elvis looked at him for a long moment. Then he got out of the car and held out the keys. "Today's that day." The attendant thought Elvis was messing with him. "Mr. Presley, that's your car." "Not anymore. It's yours." The attendant's hands were shaking as he took the keys. "I don't know what to say." Elvis clapped him on the shoulder. "You don't have to say anything. Just enjoy it." By late morning, word of what Elvis was doing had reached Graceland. Elvis's father and accountant Vernon Presley was furious. He got in his car and went out searching the Memphis streets for Elvis. He found him in front of a grocery store, handing the keys of another Cadillac to an elderly man. Vernon got out of his car and shouted, "Elvis, what in the hell do you think you're doing?" Elvis turned around, grinning. "Hey, Daddy, making people happy." "You bought 14 cars. 14! Do you have any idea what that cost? Yes, $140,000. I wrote the check this morning. Vernon's face had gone crimson. We can't afford this. I've been telling you for months. We're spending too much. Elvis's smile faded. I have money, Daddy. These people don't. What's the problem? The problem is if you keep this up, there won't be any money left. Elvis looked at his father for a long moment. Then he turned to a woman passing by with shopping bags. Ma'am, do you need a car? The woman looked bewildered. Elvis pointed to one of the remaining Cadillacs. Take it. It's yours. And he signed the title right there, in front of Vernon, just to prove a point. Vernon got back in his car and drove away, furious and helpless. In the days that followed the Cadillac spree, people kept asking the same question. Why? Was Elvis simply being generous? Or was something else going on? The people closest to Elvis had different theories. Some people believed Elvis was simply being himself. He had always given things away. He grew up poor and never forgot it. When he saw people struggling, he wanted to help. The Cadillac spree was just an extreme version of what Elvis had done his entire life. Elvis's stage manager and close friend Joe Esposito said in a later interview, Elvis didn't think about money the way ordinary people did. To him, a car was just an object. And if that object could make someone's life easier, why wouldn't you give it away? He genuinely couldn't understand why people found it strange. Others believed Elvis was experiencing a manic episode, a symptom of bipolar disorder, erratic behavior, sleeplessness, euphoric mood, compulsive spending, all the classic signs. Elvis was never officially diagnosed with bipolar disorder, but the people around him were noticing patterns. Periods of deep depression followed by explosive bursts of manic energy. The Cadillac spree happened during one of these manic phases. Elvis's physician, Dr. George Nichopoulos, known as Dr. Nick, later suggested that the combination of medications Elvis was taking could trigger manic behavior: stimulants to stay awake, sedatives to sleep, painkillers for chronic pain. That mixture could produce unpredictable psychological effects. A third theory: Elvis was asserting dominance over the one thing he could still control, his money. By 1975, Elvis felt cornered. Colonel Parker controlled his career. The touring schedule was relentless. His personal life was in shambles. He couldn't control his health, his relationships, or his fame. But money? Money he could control. And by spending it lavishly, impulsively on his own terms, Elvis was proving to himself and to everyone around him that he still owned something. Priscilla Presley suggested in her memoir that this may have been part of it. Elvis felt powerless in many areas of his life, but he could give someone a car and instantly change their life. In those moments, he felt powerful. He felt like he mattered. So what do you think? Which theory rings true to you? Share your thoughts in the comments. The Cadillac spree made headlines. Local Memphis newspapers ran stories. Elvis gives away 14 cars in one day. The national media picked it up too. Some pieces praised Elvis's generosity. Others questioned his mental health. Financial analysts calculated that Elvis had given away roughly $800,000 worth of goods in today's money in a single day. Elvis himself never made a clear statement about it. When reporters asked about the Cadillac spree, he shrugged. I like making people happy. I have money. They needed cars. That's all there is to it. Vernon Presley was still furious. He sat Elvis down again, showed him the bank statements, begged him to stop spending. Elvis nodded and said he understood, but nothing changed. For the next 2 years, Elvis kept giving away cars, jewelry, and money. Not always on the same scale as the 14 Cadillac day, but consistently and compulsively. By the time Elvis died in 1977, he had given away hundreds of vehicles: Cadillacs, Lincolns, Mercedeses. Nobody kept an exact count. What happened to the people who received those 14 Cadillacs? Some drove their cars for years. The nurse from Baptist Memorial drove hers until it broke down in the 1980s. She told a reporter in 1985, "That car changed my life." I could get to work on time. I could visit my family. And every time I got in it, I remembered that Elvis Presley had seen me, a stranger, and he cared. Some sold their cars immediately. A Cadillac was serious money in the 1970s, and for people living paycheck to paycheck, selling made far more sense than keeping it. The gas station attendant sold his within a month and used the money for community college. A few people tried to give the cars back. The woman from the park showed up at Graceland in person a week later, saying she couldn't accept such an expensive gift. Elvis's staff turned her away gently. "Mr. Presley doesn't take back gifts. It's yours. Enjoy it." Did the Cadillac spree shake Elvis financially? Yes and no. In the short term, $140,000 was a significant blow, but Elvis was still making millions from concerts and royalties. The real damage was cumulative. The Cadillac spree was just one of dozens of similar incidents. Cars, jewelry, houses, cash. Elvis gave it all away. By 1977, Elvis was in serious financial difficulty. Not broke, but stretched thin, and the spending sprees were part of the reason why. Was Elvis's generosity healthy, or was it a symptom of something darker? Psychologists who have studied Elvis's behavior suggest both were true. The impulse to help people was genuine, rooted in where Elvis came from and what he believed. But the compulsive, erratic nature of the spending, 14 cars in a single day, giving cash to strangers without a second thought, pointed to underlying mental health issues that were never properly addressed. Elvis never sought help for what may have been bipolar disorder or depression. The stigma around mental health in the 1970s was enormous, and for someone as famous as Elvis, that weight was even heavier. And the people around him, his doctors, his managers, his entourage, either failed to recognize the signs or chose to look the other way because Elvis's generosity made for good press. Today, the story of the 14 Cadillacs is one of the most famous Elvis anecdotes of all. It gets told as a heartwarming story about the king of rock and roll giving back to ordinary people. But for those who knew Elvis closely, this story is far more complicated. It's the story of a man with more money than he could spend, more fame than he could carry, and more pain than he could process. And giving things away, making other people happy, was one of the few things that still made him feel good. In his final years, Elvis gave away millions of dollars worth of cars, jewelry, and cash. Some saw it as an almost saintly generosity. Others saw it as a man in free fall, grasping for something solid. Maybe both were true. A woman sitting in a park, a nurse walking to work, a gas station attendant. People whose names Elvis didn't even know. And he changed their lives in 5 minutes because he had the power to make the impossible possible. And on that wild Memphis Monday morning, making other people happy was the only thing that made Elvis Presley feel alive.